Hey guys, I just want to show you a quick video on how I created this page that is completely mobile responsive, and at the same time it has some cool advanced functionalities to it. One of them being when you click on this button right here, it opens up this full screen pop-up, and with this pop-up what I also have is a countdown timer on the page, and once the page is filled it also goes to this amazing beautiful thank you page that I designed. So hopefully you guys like the tutorial that I made and also get to learn how you can use Infusionsoft Landing Page Builder. Few things first, I just want to make sure that you have some knowledge, not a whole lot, but some knowledge of HTML, CSS and JavaScript, as we will be using those to modify the page a little bit. And if you are looking to jump directly into the code implementation of things, the first part of the video will be more on how to design the landing page, which is also informative. But if you'd like to jump ahead to 20 minutes and 6 seconds. So let's get started. Now before we jump into the design, I want to show you a couple items that we're going to be using. We'll be using a countdown timer and a pop-up effect. So the countdown timer I got is from tickcounter.com, and I'll show you how we can modify this countdown timer so that, and then we can implement it on our Infusionsoft landing page. The second thing is UI lang. Now the reason why I want to use this instead of, let's say, jQuery or something is because this is very designer specific. You can just write code as you can see over here, and I can click on the try button, and whatever is written is what happens essentially. So it's less confusing to write code for complete newbies. I really like this site. I enjoyed some of the examples that they have. For example, this one where it's hiding this notification bar. They have some other really good examples. For example, this animated switch, it does that. Then it has the navigation. Sometimes you want a pop-up navigation but don't know how to code it. This website does it really well. Their code UI lang allows you to implement that just by writing a piece of code in more human readable language, and I'll show you again how to implement this on the page. As you can see, the accordion, and the code is literally 2 lines of code, and it doesn't even read like a code. That's the beauty behind this particular widget or widget creator, I would say. And then this pop-up right here, this is the one that we will be mimicking. However, I have modified the CSS on the page just a little bit so that it works for us, for what we are creating. But essentially that last pop-up that you saw is exactly what we will be creating on our page. So you'll get to learn a little bit how to do that. Now let's jump back into the editor so that we can start designing our page. I'll start from scratch, clicking here. Then I'll speed up some of this process just so that I can get to the design side of things. I'll start with a single column layout. This is where I'll be dropping the logo, and then we'll use some manage layout to modify the width of the column in which the logo is. I'll click on section 1, then I'll click on the row 1, which is where the content is, and in the column is where I want to resize it. So I'll go ahead and resize the width of it. So maybe 4, and then I'll align it in the center, and then I'll resize the logo just a bit to make it larger. Okay. I'll go back to manage layout and maybe make it a bit smaller. Perfect. And let's add a background color to that. Also, I'll change some spacing to make it look like a header bar. Add another new section. There's plenty of sections that are pre-made for you to pick from. For this particular example though, I'd rather want to create my own, so I'll start from scratch. I'll add a blank one with a 2-column, and in one side essentially I'd want to drop the image of the book cover, and the other side will be just text. I also want to make sure that as I'm making these pages, I'm also designing them with mobile in mind and make them mobile specific. So I'll go ahead and modify each of the section to very specific widths for both desktop and mobile just by resizing it for mobile. I want the book to show in its full width on a mobile device. I'll do the same thing with the other column also. I'll try to follow this practice, and I'd advise you to follow this best practice also, so that there is less rework after you publish the page. Now I'll go ahead and start speeding up some of the process of typing all the content, so you don't have to see me go through the painful process of coming up with great content altogether. Now I'll just continue adding the button and remainder of the layout on the page. I'll add a few rows, and then in those rows I'll just start placing all the content as appropriate. I don't expect you to follow the design practice. This video is designed more towards creating that pop-up and that countdown timer effect, so I'll try to keep my focus more on that and less on how I'm creating the content. I have created other videos where you can see how I'm creating this content one at a time, so hopefully my other videos might be helpful with those. Now what I'll do is I'll go to manage layout. I'll name all these sections. I'll call this one a header. I'll call this second section intro. And then what I want to do is go in the manage layout side of things, and as you go out you can see the names have changed to header and intro. I'll click on the intro and go to the last row where I have the icons, and I'll delete the other two columns. When I can just replicate these twice so that I have the same work and I have to do less work essentially. Just pick the right icon and change some text. Now I'll bring the last column, change its setting a little bit, give it some border radius, and give it a light blue background just to bring more attention to it. Essentially drive visitors' eyes towards a specific offerer on the page so that they get the real value proposition out of it. Next thing I want to do is resize the size of this section. So I'll click on the spacing and add more padding above and below with the vertical spacing on and make it large. And next thing I want to do is add the form that is going to pop up. So the way we do it is we create it as a new section. I'll select this one. This one looks nice. Change the colors of it, Next thing what I want to do is I want to go to the setting and name this, and it's very important that you name this particular section. I'll call it registration, because this is the name that we will be triggering to create that pop-up effect. And I'll shift click on the square box to change its color to white. I'll remove any margin and padding. Then I'll just add my custom style to them, and I'll add the background color of white. Now let's modify the button. We'll make it green in color, change all the content if we need to. Style it to a full, so it looks nice and clean right in the middle. Now what we want to do is we want to drag the code element, and this is where we are going to add the countdown timer. So in the code snippet you'll see it's empty. Let's jump on to the tickcounter.com and we'll modify our counter to be maybe, let's say, 2 weeks out. Now when there are more options, you can kind of change items. So I can change the border to 0. I already kind of know what I want the countdown timer to look like, which is very plain and simple, so that I can make it look and match to my website that I have, just like that. Now I'm picking the green color over here, so I'm just copying the green color that I'm using, and I want to change the red countdown to this. Now these are all custom modifications, you don't have to follow these, but just showing you how I'm doing my modification. I'm clicking on that little edit button to get to the editing part of the colors that I have in my color palette, and I'm just applying those to make my countdown timer look and match my branding. Now let's copy the embed code that it's giving us, and we'll paste it into that empty area of the code snippet, and that's all you need really to make the countdown appear. Now let's modify the form a little bit, and I think these are all the fields that I care for. And make sure that email is required. You can also say your work email, sometimes that drives a higher conversion. Now since this section is going to be the pop-up part, let's add a button up top that's a close button. This will allow us to click on and close this pop-up again, and I'll just call it close, and I'll give it a specific styling. Now styling to this is very important in order for it to do that pop-up effect and the closing effect that we are about to program in a few minutes. Add a footer section. I think there is a pre-made footer, so I won't spend too much time in creating a brand new footer. I think this one looks good, so I'll just add it. I'll just change the colors to match the brand a little bit. I might add one more gray background to the footer to make it stand out a little bit. Okay, now that our whole page is designed, let's click on the next form redirect options, and we'll click create a new thank you page by clicking on design a thank you page. Once I'm on that, because I started the template from scratch, it will show me everything blank with nothing in there, and I'll just start designing the two-column look that I'm going after. I'll add the green background to the section and drag the image placeholder. Change the image to the book cover that I have. Change the size of the book. Now let's add the same footer that we had previously on the page. I'll just quickly style it to make it look and feel the same as the previous page. Now to create the unique look and feel on that sidebar where I have 3 bullet lists, I'll go into column 2 and I'll change its background color to white first of all, and I'll probably give it some radius. I'll also make sure that the mobile width of it is full. I'll give it some radius so it looks curvy. Then in here, the first thing I'd want to do is add some text. Now what I want to do is go into column 2, and you can see there's already the text, and I'll add a row and make it a single column row, and in this row we have a single column, and I'll add a light blue background to that column. I'll give it some radius. I want to also make sure that the mobile width is full, and then I'll just make it curvy, then go into spacing. And both vertical and horizontal spacing, I want to make sure that we add some padding essentially around the box. So I'll go to the horizontal and add more margin. This looks good. I'll do the same thing with the vertical. I'll add some margin and some padding, some spacing in it. And in here what I want to do is I'll drag a text out for now, but essentially what I want to do is in this column I want to add another row. So I'll add a 2-column row. This is where I want to resize each of the column for the icon, and like a bullet list, essentially the 3-step process that I showed in the preview earlier. I want to replicate that, so I'm just resizing the columns, dragging and dropping the icon, customizing it a little bit. Now I'll add the text and other elements that I need for this area. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm making it once, and then I can fix all the spacing and all that once and modify the whole thing to my liking, and then I can replicate it 3 times to make 3 different bullet lists that I want to create. So the first one will tell the user to check their email, the second one will tell them to open their email, and then the third one will ask them to click on the link to confirm essentially the email that they're getting. Now I can just go into the row that I created and I can replicate it twice, and bam, I have a bullet list that's now easy for me to modify, just changing the content around, the icon around, and we're on our way. Now that we are done with our design, let's talk about how we are going to implement the pop-up. Essentially what we are doing here is taking the section and making it into a full page pop-up when clicked on the button. Let's go ahead and go to the launch step, and so this is where we'll be adding a lot of code. Essentially what we'll be doing is in the head area we'll be adding the JavaScript and custom CSS. Now what I've also done is I've created this custom code snippet. I'll be sharing the link of this with you. You can simply copy this entire thing and paste it in your head area also, like how I'm about to do. So copy and paste, and we can expand this and look at the entire code. I've also added some code in the body area. Essentially what this code reads is clicking on the .btn adds the .open to hash registration. What this code is telling is when I click on this button, and if we look at the source code of it, the button itself has a bunch of classes that are added, and one of them is the .btn. So what I'm saying is when a .btn is clicked on, that code is activating the .open class, and the .open class is where my CSS essentially makes the pop-up happen. So as I'm clicking on the sign up button, it opens this pop-up, and then when I look at the close right here, I have a class over here. You can see it has a lot of classes also, but the one particular I'm looking for is something like a button pill. Essentially the reason why I gave this shape, the circular shape, is so that I can take this one unique class that separates these two buttons. This button has a shadow. You can see that it has the button shadow deep class, and that's what gives it that shadow. So essentially I took two unique classes, button shadow deep and the close or the button pill, and then I'll just go into those and modify those. So I can simply copy the button shadow deep like that, and I'll just update that over there. So essentially what I'm saying is when the button shadow deep class is clicked on, add the class open, which is in here open, which brings the opacity of the registration to 1. Before that the opacity of it was 0. And then on clicking on the button pill, it removes the open class, so it brings it back to what it's supposed to be. So there. And then if you look at the button class, I have the button class pill just right there. So when those classes are clicked, this UI lang actually triggers that unique pop-up look and feel for us. Now let's go ahead and republish this page to see if it works. If you are missing out on any code, don't worry, I'll share the code with you, so you should be able to look at it, read it, and understand what's going on. I'll click on the button and there it is, it works. So there you have it, a really nice pop-up with a countdown timer on your page. Thanks for watching.